August 17, 1943. 8:47 a.m., 23,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. Hauptmann Klaus Weber, 28 kills to his name, flying a Messerschmitt Bf-109G with Jagdgeschwader 26, watched his wingman's aircraft disintegrate in a single second. One moment Oberleutnant Franz Heller was there, 3 meters off Weber's right wing, exactly where he should be. The next moment, aluminum confetti tumbling toward the farmland below. No fire, no smoke trail, just instant structural failure. Weber's gloved hand tightened on the control column. Ahead, the formation that killed Heller continued northeast. 18 Boeing B-17G Flying Fortresses of the United States Army, Air Force's 8th Air Force, 300 81st Bombardment Group, flying from Ridgewell, England. Their target, the ball-bearing factories that kept the Wehrmacht's tanks rolling. Weber had intercepted bomber formations 43 times since June 1941. He'd shot down British Lancasters, Russian Il-4s, American B-24 Liberators. This was different. The B-17s flew in perfect formation, 3 plane elements stacked in a combat box designed by American tacticians who understood something the Luftwaffe was just beginning to grasp: overlapping fields of fire. 13 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns per aircraft, 234 guns total across this single formation. Weber did the mathematics in his head. Cone of defensive fire extending 800 meters in every direction. Adler 2 to Adler leader, his radio crackled. What happened to Heller? He got too close. Weber kept his voice steady. Training at Jagdfliegerschule 3 in Verneuchen had prepared him for everything except the reality of American engineering. Reform on my left wing. We attack from above, 3 o'clock high, dive through, break low. Standard doctrine. Every Luftwaffe fighter manual said this was how you killed bombers. Approach from the sun if possible. Use altitude advantage. Concentrate fire on engines or cockpit. Break away before defensive fire could track you. What the manuals didn't say: American bombers weren't following German assumptions about what was aerodynamically possible. If stories of courage and ingenuity move you, please like and subscribe. Every subscription helps us honor the memories of those who served. Klaus Weber had grown up in Dortmund, industrial heartland of the Ruhr. His father worked at Hoesch Steelworks. His mother kept house for 6 children in 3 rooms. Klaus was 12 when he saw his first aircraft, a Junkers F-13 passenger plane landing at Dortmund Airport. The engine sound, that deep thrumming power, changed his life's trajectory in 30 seconds. He spent every free afternoon at the airport cleaning hangars in exchange for the mechanic's explanations of how engines worked, how wings generated lift, how control surfaces translated pilot input into maneuver. September 1939. Poland. Weber was 19, newly commissioned lieutenant in the Luftwaffe, flying Bf-109Es with Jagdgeschwader 51. The Polish Air Force used PZL P-11 fighters, high-wing monoplanes with fixed landing gear and 645 horsepower radial engines. Weber's Bf-109E had 1,050 horsepower and retractable gear. The combat was asymmetric. He scored his first kill September 4th over Warsaw, a PZL P-11 attempting to intercept a Heinkel bomber formation. The Polish pilot never saw Weber coming. France, 1940. Battle of Britain, 1940 to 1941. Russia, 1941 to 1942. Weber accumulated kills the way his father had accumulated years at Hoesch, methodically, without illusions. 28 confirmed victories by August 1943. Hauptmann at 26 years old. Iron Cross First Class. Promotion to Staffelkapitän, Squadron Commander, pending. July 1943. Transfer to JG-26, based at Lille-Vanville, France. Mission: intercept American daylight bomber raids over occupied Europe. Intelligence briefings mentioned a new American heavy bomber, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, operational in increasing numbers since late 1942. Weber studied the intelligence photographs: 4 engines, 10,000-pound bomb load, 2,000-mile range. The photographs showed something else: gun turrets protruding from every surface. Dorsal turret, ventral turret, tail turret, waist guns, chin turret on the newer G models. His commanding officer, Major Gerhard Schultz, had laughed during the briefing. Americans solve every problem with more guns. We solve every problem with better pilots and better tactics. Weber hadn't laughed. The numbers bothered him: 13 guns per aircraft. He'd engaged bombers before: German Heinkels, British Lancasters, Russian TB-3s. None carried more than 6 defensive weapons. 13 suggested the Americans understood something about defensive fire doctrine that other air forces had missed. August 17th, first direct engagement with B-17G formations. The mission briefing at 6:30 a.m. 8 Staffeln, roughly 72, Bf-109G fighters, would intercept the American formation over Schweinfurt. Intelligence estimated 230 B-17s inbound, escorted by P-47 Thunderbolts to the German border, then unescorted for the final approach. Window of opportunity: maybe 40 minutes to inflict maximum casualties before the P-47s picked them up on the return flight. Weber's Staffel, 12 aircraft. His specific flight, 4 Bf-109Gs including Weber, Heller, and 2 younger pilots, Unteroffizier Schmidt and Bauer, 18 and 19 years old respectively, combined flight hours barely exceeding 200. He'd briefed them at 7:15. Standard approach from Sun: we dive, engage, brake. Do not, repeat, do not attempt to follow a target if your first pass doesn't disable it. Brake low, use speed to exit the defensive envelope. Schmidt had raised his hand. Sir, what if we disable an engine? Should we follow to confirm the kill? No. The moment you slow down to observe results, 30 other bombers have firing solutions on you. Hit once. Exit. Survive. 8:42 a.m. Contact. The American formation appeared at 23,000 feet, heading northeast toward Schweinfurt at 182 miles per hour, cruising speed for a B-17G loaded with bombs. Weber's Staffel was at 26,000 feet, 4,000 meters northwest, Sun behind them. Perfect intercept geometry. Adler Staffel, this is Adler Leader, arm weapons. We dive in 60 seconds, target the lead element, concentrate fire on number 3 and 4 engines. That's the right side of each aircraft. Aim for the engine nacelles or cockpit, short bursts, 2 seconds maximum, then brake low and left. 60 seconds. Weber checked his weapons. 120mm MG 151/20 cannon firing through the propeller hub, 2 13mm MG 131 machine guns mounted in the engine cowling. Total ammunition: 200 rounds of 20mm, 600 rounds of 13mm. Enough for maybe 12 2-second bursts. His right hand rested on the throttle, left hand on the control column. The Bf-109G responded to tiny inputs: over-control it, and you'd snap into a spin at this altitude. The Americans flew stable platforms designed for crew comfort and bomb accuracy. The Bf-10-9 was a racing car with guns. You flew it every second, or it flew you. 30 seconds. The formation grew larger. Weber could distinguish individual aircraft now, serial numbers painted on tail fins. turrets tracking, slow, deliberate movements as gunners searched for threats. The lead B-17 had nose art, a cartoon woman riding a bomb. Americans painted their aircraft with names and artwork, as if bombing German factories was entertainment. Weber pushed forward on the control column. The Bf-109 pitched down. Airspeed built, 300 kilometers per hour, 350, 400, 450. The engine screamed. Daimler-Benz, DB, 605 AM, 1,475 horsepower at emergency power, 6 minutes maximum before overheating. Weber had 6 minutes to close 4,000 meters, fire, and exit. The mathematics of interception: closing speed approximately 200 meters per second. Time to target, 20 seconds. At 800 meters, maximum effective range for the American .50 caliber guns, they would open fire. He needed to survive 8 seconds of defensive fire, deliver his attack at 400 meters, then break away before structural stress or incoming fire disabled his aircraft. 8 seconds, 4 years of training, 2 years of combat experience, 28 confirmed kills. Everything came down to 8 seconds. 8:46 a.m. Range, 1,200 meters. The first tracer rounds appeared. Not the random defensive fire Weber expected, coordinated, disciplined volleys from multiple aircraft. The Americans had trained their gunners to create overlapping fire zones. Individual accuracy didn't matter when you could put 234 guns into a single cubic kilometer of airspace. Weber ignored the tracers. Focus on the target. Second aircraft in the lead element, serial number 42-30177. 4. Wright R-1820, Cyclone radial engines, each producing 1,200 horsepower. Self-sealing fuel tanks, American innovation that the Luftwaffe engineers had dismissed as unnecessary weight until they realized bullets couldn't ignite protected fuel. Range, 800 meters, 8 seconds to firing position. The B-17's tail turret opened fire, then the dorsal turret, then the waist guns. Tracer rounds, every fifth round marked with burning phosphorus, created visible streams converging on Weber's approach vector. He adjusted, rolling 10 degrees right, then left, creating an unpredictable flight path. Schmidt's voice on the radio, taking fire, taking... Static. Weber glanced right. Schmidt's Bf-109 was gone. No explosion, just absent. Structural failure or pilot killed instantly. Either way, Schmidt's parents in Munich would receive a telegram within 48 hours explaining their son died for Führer and fatherland. 6 seconds. Heller's voice. Brake left, brake. Weber broke instinctively. A stream of .50 caliber rounds passed through the space his aircraft had occupied 1 second earlier. The Americans weren't firing randomly. They were calculating lead time, predicting where his aircraft would be, not where it was. 4 seconds. Range, 400 meters. Firing position. Weber's right thumb found the cannon trigger. His brain processed the targeting solution. Lead the aircraft by 3 meters, accounting for closure rate and projectile drop. The B-17's right wing filled his windscreen. He could see details. Rivets in the aluminum skin, the number 4 engine spinning at 2,300 RPM, exhaust stacks glowing orange. 2 seconds. Fire. The 20mm cannon recoiled. Bright flashes along the B-17's wing. Hits. Then, the dorsal turret swiveled. 2 Browning M2s tracking. Range, 200 meters. The gunner had Weber perfectly bracketed. Weber's brain made the calculation before his conscious mind registered it. The gunner would fire in 0.8 seconds. At this closure rate, Weber would be inside the defensive fire cone for 1.2 seconds. The mathematics were unambiguous. He was already dead. He slammed the control column left and down. The Bf-109 snap-rolled, inverted, diving away from the formation. G-forces crushed him into the seat. 6 Gs, 7 Gs, vision graying at the edges. Behind him, .50 caliber rounds passed through airspace he'd vacated. 10 seconds later, Weber was 1,000 meters below the formation, alive because he'd broken doctrine and abandoned his attack before confirming results. He leveled out at 20,000 feet, heart hammering, hands shaking. The B-17 formation continued northeast, perfect and undisturbed. Serial 42-30177 showed no damage Weber could observe. His cannon rounds had hit. He'd seen the impacts, but the B-17 absorbed them like raindrops. He checked his flight. 4 aircraft at the start, 3 now. Schmidt dead or missing. Heller? Adler leader. This is Adler 2. Relief flooded through Weber. Heller. Status. Fuel tank hit. 25 minutes endurance remaining. Hydraulics damaged. Landing gear may not extend. Returning to base. 2 pilots lost from a 4-aircraft flight. 0 confirmed kills. Weber's Iron Cross First Class suddenly felt like a participation trophy. The rest of the mission followed the same pattern. JG-26's fighters attacked the B-17 formation 11 more times over the next 40 minutes as the Americans approached Schweinfurt, dropped their bombs, and turned back toward England. Each attack followed perfect doctrine: sun position advantage, altitude advantage, high-speed diving attacks from angles designed to minimize exposure to defensive fire. Each attack accomplished nothing. The Americans lost 24 B-17s that day, not to fighter attack, but to concentrated flak over Schweinfurt. The ball-bearing factories were defended by 88mm flak 36 anti-aircraft guns firing proximity-fused shells. The B-17s flew through the flak because they had no choice. Their mission was to drop bombs on target, and they dropped bombs on target. Weber's Staffel lost 5 aircraft, 21% casualty rate, 0 confirmed bomber kills. He landed at Lille-Vanville at 11:34 a.m. Ground crew swarmed his Bf-109, examining damage. 3 hits in the fuselage from .50 caliber rounds that had passed completely through the aircraft without hitting anything critical, 16 holes in the tail section, 1 control cable severed. The crew chief, Feldwebel Ernst Keller, who'd maintained Weber's aircraft since 1941, whistled. "You're lucky those rounds missed the fuel tank." Weber climbed out of the cockpit. His flight suit was soaked with sweat despite the sub-zero temperatures at altitude. "The Americans have self-sealing tanks. Why don't we?" Keller shrugged. "Add 60 kilograms. Reduces range and performance. And keeps you alive when you're shot." Weber walked toward the operations building where the debriefing would happen. He didn't look back at the aircraft. He needed to write letters to Schmidt's parents and Heller's wife, explaining why their loved ones weren't coming home. The debriefing started at 12 a.m. in the operations room. Major Schultz, the Jagdgeschwader's operations officer, stood before a map of the day's mission route. Colored pins marked B-17 formations, fighter interception points, crashed aircraft, more pins on the German side than the American. Schultz spoke. "Preliminary assessment: the Americans lost 24 bombers today. Intelligence estimates 36 will return with battle damage requiring extensive repair. Approximately 15% attrition, unacceptable for them if sustained over time." Weber raised his hand. "Sir, we lost 12 fighters, 16% casualties. That's higher than their bomber losses." The room went silent. "You didn't contradict Major Schultz during debriefings." You definitely didn't point out that German losses exceeded enemy losses when the official narrative was German tactical superiority. Schultz's face hardened. Hauptmann Weber, the Luftwaffe fighter force exists to destroy enemy bombers. Today we destroyed 24. That is, success by definition. Sir, with respect, Flak destroyed those bombers. Fighters destroyed perhaps 3 or 4. Meanwhile, we lost 12 pilots. Are you suggesting our tactics are inadequate? Weber stood. The other pilots watched, some sympathetic, others calculating whether Weber was about to commit career suicide. Sir, I'm suggesting the B-17G Flying Fortress has fundamentally changed the calculus of bomber interception. Standard doctrine assumes bombers have limited defensive fire capability. The B-17 has 13.50 caliber machine guns with overlapping fields of fire. Approaching from any angle exposes us to fire from minimum 4 gun positions. The doctrine needs revision. Schultz stared at Weber for 10 seconds. Then, you have an alternative proposal? Weber walked to the map. The Americans fly in formation specifically to create defensive fire coverage. Individual B-17s are vulnerable. Formation B-17s are nearly invincible. We need to break formations first, then attack isolated aircraft. And how do you propose breaking formations? Frontal attack, head-on approach. It's the only angle where they have minimal defensive coverage, just the chin turret on newer models and maybe nose guns. We approach at high speed, fire directly into the cockpit or nose section, break immediately. We don't follow. We don't observe results. We hit and exit before their formation can respond. Another pilot, Oberleutnant Werner Hoffmann, 11 kills, spoke up. A head-on approach means closing speed over 700 kilometers per hour. You have maybe 2 seconds to aim and fire, and if you misjudge the brake, you collide with a 30-ton aircraft at combined speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour. Better than what we did today, Weber said. Today, we lost 12 aircraft and killed maybe 4 bombers. The Americans can replace bombers faster than we can replace pilots. We need tactics that create favorable exchange ratios. What we're doing now is suicide by doctrine. Schultz studied the map. Your proposal is noted. Dismissed. August 18, 1943, 6:15 a.m. Weber sat in the operations room writing mandatory reports, combat engagement summaries, tactical assessments, casualty notifications. The casualty notifications hurt most. He'd written 38 in 2 years. Each one followed the same format: date, time, location, circumstances of death, personal effects inventory, recommendations for posthumous decorations. Unteroffizier Johann Schmidt, age 18, from Munich. Shot down during bomber interception mission over Schweinfurt. Aircraft destroyed. Pilot killed instantly. Personal effects recovered included 1 wristwatch, 1 Iron Cross second class, 1 photograph of parents, 1 rosary. Recommendation: Iron Cross first class, posthumously awarded. The words felt hollow. Schmidt had been 18. He'd never kissed a girl. He'd told Weber that 3 days earlier after drinking too much schnapps at the officers' mess. Hauptmann, I'm scared I'll die without kissing a girl. Weber had laughed it off, told him there'd be time after the war. Now there would be no time and no war's end for Johann Schmidt. Weber signed the report, sealed it, added it to the stack. At 8:30, Major Schultz entered. Hauptmann Weber, walk with me. They walked across the airfield toward the maintenance hangar, where ground crews worked on damaged Bf-109s. August in northern France, morning sun already warming the concrete, smell of aviation fuel and hot metal, distant sound of engines being tested. Schultz said, "Your proposal yesterday, about frontal attacks." "Sir, I spoke with Oberst Priller. Joseph Priller, Geschwader Commodore of JG-26, holder of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords, 100 plus confirmed kills." If Priller spoke, people listened. And? He says you're probably right. The Americans are building fortress-level defensive fire into every bomber. Standard doctrine won't work. We need new approaches or we'll lose the fighter force before winter. Weber stopped walking. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. The B-17 shouldn't be possible. 13 guns, self-sealing tanks, armor plating, and it still flies at 180 miles per hour with 5,000 kilograms of bombs. That shouldn't be aerodynamically achievable. Every engineering principle says you can't have defensive armament, armor protection, bomb load, and operational range. The Americans achieved all four." Schultz nodded slowly. "Because they don't accept limitations the way we do. German engineering says, this is impossible, therefore we won't attempt it. American engineering says, this is impossible, so we'll spend more money until it becomes possible. They outspent the problem. They industrialized warfare in a way we didn't anticipate," Weber said. "The Americans are producing B-17s faster than we're shooting them down. Even if we kill 50 bombers today, they'll replace them within a month. We can't win an attrition fight against American production capacity. So what do we do?" Weber looked at the damaged Bf-10-9s being repaired. "We survive. We try new tactics. We hope the Americans make strategic mistakes. And we write letters to parents explaining why their sons died fighting aircraft that shouldn't legally be allowed to exist." September 6, 1943. First trial of frontal attack tactics. Weber led a swarm, 4 aircraft, against a B-17 formation over Belgium. Instead of the standard diving attack from above and behind, they approached head-on at 24,000 feet, diving slightly to build speed, aiming directly at the lead bomber's cockpit. Closing speed: 720 kilometers per hour. Time in firing position: 1.8 seconds. Weber opened fire at 400 meters. 20-millimeter cannon and 13-millimeter machine guns converging on the B-17's nose. He saw hits, windscreen shattering, aluminum tearing. Then he broke hard left, inverting to dive away from the formation. Behind him, Lieutenant Hans Berger's Bf-109 didn't brake fast enough. Collision at 700 kilometers per hour combined speed. Both aircraft disintegrated. Berger dead instantly. The B-17's number 2 engine torn off, left wing trailing fuel, but the aircraft remained airborne long enough for the crew to bail out over Belgium. 1 German fighter lost, 1 American bomber probably destroyed, 10 American aircrew alive and now prisoners of war. The mathematics were marginally better than diving attacks from behind. Marginally. October 14, 1943. Second Schweinfurt raid. The Americans returned with 291 B-17 escorts by P-47 Thunderbolts to the German border. JG-26 intercepted over the Netherlands with 17 Staffel, approximately 150 fighters total. The battle lasted 90 minutes. Weber's Staffel engaged the bomber stream 4 times. First pass, frontal attack. Weber destroyed 1 B-17, confirmed by ground observers who saw it crash near Aachen. Second pass, attacking a damaged straggler that had fallen behind the formation. Unteroffizier Bauer scored hits, but the B-17 continued flying. Third pass, diving attack from 6 o'clock high. Weber's wingman, Oberfeldwebel Karl Müller, was shot down by return fire from a waist gunner. Müller bailed out, landed safely, returned to base the next day. Fourth pass never happened. Weber's engine took a hit from flak, not American flak, but friendly fire from German 88mm batteries that couldn't distinguish Bf-109S from P-47S at 20,000 feet. His engine seized. He dead-sticked the aircraft into a field in Luxembourg, walked away with bruised ribs and damaged pride. The Americans lost 60 B-17s that day. 207 returned to England. The Luftwaffe lost 38 fighters. The USAAF suspended deep penetration raids for 4 months. Tactical German victory. Strategic American learning experience. December 1943. Weber was transferred to Jagdgeschwader 11, based near Berlin. New mission: defend the Reich against increasing American daylight bombing raids targeting aircraft factories, ball-bearing plants, oil refineries. The Americans were systematically destroying German industrial capacity, and they were doing it in daylight with precision bombing that Luftwaffe intelligence had considered impossible. December 20th, Bremen raid. Weber's Staffel intercepted 90 B-17s approaching the port facilities. Fifth engagement since his transfer. By now, he'd learned what worked. Frontal attacks created chaos but rarely killed bombers. High-altitude diving attacks meant suicide against concentrated defensive fire. The only consistently successful tactic was targeting damaged aircraft that had dropped out of formation, wounded stragglers separated from the protective box. That's what Weber did. He spotted a B-17G trailing white smoke from the No. 3 engine, lagging 500 meters behind the main formation. Serial number 42-31503. Tail marking H with a triangle. 91st Bombardment Group out of Bassingbourn, England. Weber approached from 5 o'clock low, using the sun and the bomber's damaged state to stay undetected. Range 600 meters. The tail gunner wasn't moving, killed, wounded, or unconscious from oxygen deprivation at 23,000 feet. The waist gunners were focused on fighters approaching from other angles. Range 400 meters. Weber opened fire. 20 rounds of 20mm cannon, 60 rounds of 13mm machine gun ammunition. Hits along the fuselage. The No. 3 engine, already damaged, caught fire. Then the No. 4 engine, black smoke. The B-17 entered a slow spiral. Weber didn't follow. He'd learned that lesson. He broke away, returned to base, filed the combat report. 3 days later, Allied intelligence forwarded through Swiss intermediaries identified the crew. 10 men, 3 killed in the initial flak damage over Bremen, 7 bailed out over Germany and captured. The pilot, Captain Robert Hayes, 91st Bombardment Group, 324th Squadron, had flown 43 missions. This was his last. Weber read the intelligence report. It included Hayes's debriefing testimony after capture. The German fighter approached while we were damaged and vulnerable. Standard tactic: they don't engage healthy bombers in formation, they hunt wounded aircraft. The pilot knew exactly where to position for minimal defensive fire exposure. Professional execution: if our aircraft hadn't been damaged, we'd have survived. Once separated from formation, survival time is measured in minutes. Professional execution: Weber filed the report with the others. He'd killed or contributed to killing 42 Allied aircraft by January 1944. 42 crews, maybe 350 men total. Some dead, most prisoners. He knew their aircraft serial numbers and squadron markings. He didn't know their names and didn't want to. February 20th, 1944. Big week. The Americans launched coordinated raids against German aircraft production facilities, Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Junkers. 6 consecutive days of daylight bombing with fighter escort penetrating deep into German airspace. The P-51 Mustang, with its extended range, now accompanied bomber formations all the way to the target and back. Everything changed. Previously, Luftwaffe fighters had 40-minute windows to attack unescorted bombers. Now, American fighters stayed with the bombers throughout the mission. Weber's Staffel engaged a B-17 formation over Gotha on February 22, only to be bounced by P-51 Mustangs with altitude advantage and superior speed. 3 German fighters lost in 2 minutes. 0 bombers destroyed. Weber survived by running. Full throttle, emergency power, dive away from the Mustangs, find cloud cover, get home. Not tactics. Survival. February 24th. Second engagement over Schweinfurt. This time Weber's Staffel was bounced by P-47 Thunderbolts before reaching the bombers. The Thunderbolts had learned German tactics. They positioned high and ahead of the bomber stream, waiting for interceptors. Weber lost 2 more pilots before his Staffel even fired at a bomber. The strategic calculus had inverted. Previously, German fighters attacked American bombers with tolerable loss rates. Now, American fighters were destroying German interceptors before they could engage bombers. March 6, 1944. Weber was shot down for the second time, this time by a P-51 Mustang over Berlin. Cannon round through the engine compartment. Fire. Bailout at 18,000 feet. Parachute deployment. 19 minutes descending through freezing air while watching his aircraft burn on the way down. He landed in a field outside Potsdam. Local farmers found him, notified Wehrmacht authorities, transported him back to his base. Bruised vertebrae, frostbite on his hands from the sub-zero temperatures at altitude, but alive. His commanding officer visited him in the hospital. Hauptmann Weber, you're being transferred to Ergänzungsjagdgruppe Ost, Training Command. We need experienced pilots teaching the next generation. Weber understood what that meant. You're too valuable to risk losing in combat. The Luftwaffe couldn't afford to lose pilots with 42 confirmed kills and 3 years of tactical experience. Better to have him training replacements than getting killed by a P-51. He spent the rest of 1944 teaching 18-year-old boys with 120 flight hours how to intercept B-17 formations they'd never survive engaging. He taught them frontal attacks. He taught them to hunt stragglers. He taught them to run when American fighters appeared. Most of them died within 3 months of graduation. April 1945, Soviet forces encircled Berlin. The Luftwaffe training school evacuated to Bavaria. Weber was offered transportation west to surrender to American forces rather than Soviet. He declined. He'd fought Americans for 2 years. He knew what American POW camps were like. Allied pilots who'd been shot down and captured reported decent treatment, adequate food, compliance with Geneva Conventions. He surrendered to American forces near Munich on May 2, 1945. 3 days before Germany's unconditional surrender. The POW camp was at Dachau, ironically the same location as the former concentration camp the Americans had liberated 3 weeks earlier. The captured Luftwaffe pilots were segregated from Wehrmacht soldiers and SS personnel. The Americans wanted to debrief them about aircraft, tactics, operational procedures. Weber's debriefing officer was Captain James Mitchell, United States Army Air Force's intelligence. Mitchell had flown 25 missions as a B-17 pilot with the 381 Bombardment Group, the same unit Weber had engaged on August 17, 1943. Mitchell asked, "What did you think when you first engaged B-17 formations?" Weber answered honestly, I thought it should be illegal to build an aircraft like that. 13 guns, self-sealing tanks, armor plating, 5,000-kilogram bomb load, 2,000-mile range. That combination shouldn't be aerodynamically achievable. And yet we built 12,731 of them. That's what lost us the war, not superior tactics or better pilots. Industrial capacity. You outproduced us 4-1 in aircraft, 8-1 in engines, 12-1 in machine guns. We were fighting an industrial nation that treated warfare like a manufacturing problem and solved it by building more factories. Mitchell nodded. And the B-17 specifically? The B-17 changed everything. Before the B-17G, bomber formations were vulnerable to fighter attack. Standard tactics worked. Diving passes, concentrated fire on engines or crew compartments, exit before defensive fire could track you. The B-17G forced us to develop entirely new approaches: frontal attacks, straggler hunting, coordination with flak batteries. Even then, your loss rates were sustainable, and ours weren't. Why? Because you built bombers faster than we killed them, and you trained replacement crews faster than we killed crews. By late 1944, every bomber we destroyed was replaced within 2 weeks. Every pilot we killed was replaced within a month. We couldn't sustain those attrition rates. We ran out of experienced pilots before you ran out of bombers. Mitchell wrote notes. German pilots claimed the B-17 was nearly invulnerable. Not invulnerable. Extremely difficult to destroy. The self-sealing tanks meant incendiary rounds rarely caused fires. The armor plating protected crew and critical systems. The structural strength meant aircraft absorbed incredible damage and remained airborne. I personally saw B-17s return to England with one engine out, tail section partially destroyed, and 50 caliber-sized holes throughout the fuselage. Crews would patch them overnight and fly the next mission. Did that affect German pilot morale? Weber paused. Honesty felt dangerous but pointless to hide. Yes. When you engage enemy aircraft 40 times and they keep flying despite hits, you start questioning whether victory is possible. When you lose experienced wingmen to defensive fire while bombing missions continue regardless, you understand you're fighting an opponent who won't be defeated by tactical excellence. You're fighting industrial capacity and strategic determination that exceeds anything Germany could match. Mitchell closed his notebook. Thank you, Hauptmann Weber. Your testimony is valuable for our post-war analysis. Weber asked, Captain, may I ask, the raid on August 17, 1943, over Schweinfurt, your unit, the 381st Bombardment Group. Did you fly that mission? I did. Navigator on serial 42-30177. The aircraft Weber had attacked, the aircraft that absorbed his cannon fire and continued flying. What was the damage? 3 cannon hits in the right wing, 26 machine gun holes throughout the fuselage. Number 3 engine operating at reduced power but functional. We dropped our bombs on target and returned to Ridgewell. Aircraft was repaired and flew again 5 days later. Weber smiled without humor. I thought I'd disabled that aircraft. You hit us. The B-17 absorbed it. That's what it was designed to do: protect the crew, complete the mission, return home. Sometimes all 3, sometimes just 2, occasionally only the mission completion, but always enough to justify the next raid. Should have been illegal to build an aircraft that effective. Maybe. But we built it anyway. That's how America fights, by making the impossible routine. Klaus Weber was released from Allied custody in January 1946. He returned to Dortmund, or what remained of it. Allied bombing had destroyed 40% of the city's structures, including the Hoesch steelworks where his father had worked. His father had died in 1944 during an RAF raid. His mother had evacuated to relatives in the countryside and survived. Weber found work at a reconstruction company, clearing rubble and rebuilding infrastructure. Physical labor, 12-hour days, fair wages. The work was meaningless but occupied his mind enough to prevent excessive thought. He never spoke about the war except once, in 1952, when a newspaper journalist researching Luftwaffe aces found him. The journalist wanted to know about his 42 confirmed victories, his Iron Cross First Class, his tactical innovations in bomber interception. Weber said, "I killed men who were doing their jobs, flying aircraft their nation sent them to fly. Some were probably good men. Most were probably ordinary men doing extraordinary things because their country asked them to. I don't regret defending Germany. That was my duty as I understood it in 1943. I regret that the war happened at all and that so many died for strategies that were doomed from the moment America entered the conflict. But you were an ace, 42 kills, that's 42 crews, maybe 350 men total. Some killed instantly when their aircraft exploded. Others bailed out and became prisoners. A few might have survived the war and returned home. I don't know their names. I don't want to know. They were targets then. They're ghosts now. The only meaningful number is that 12,000 B-17s were built and maybe 3,000 were destroyed in combat. The exchange ratio was unsustainable for us and acceptable for them." The journalist published an article titled, "Luftwaffe Ace Admits Defeat Was Inevitable." Weber never read it. Klaus Weber died in 1987, age 71, from lung cancer likely caused by years of smoking. He was survived by his wife Marguerite, whom he married in 1948, and two sons who knew their father had been a Luftwaffe pilot but knew nothing else because he never discussed it. His funeral was attended by 23 people: family, former colleagues from the reconstruction company, 3 surviving Luftwaffe veterans who'd flown with him in 1943 to 1944, no military honors, no speeches about heroism or sacrifice. A Lutheran minister read from Ecclesiastes, "A time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up." The minister didn't mention that Weber had killed 42 enemy aircraft because Weber had specifically requested in his will. No military service mention. "I was a carpenter who helped rebuild Dortmund. That's how I want to be remembered." His Iron Cross First Class was found in a shoebox in his attic after his death. His sons donated it to a museum. It's currently displayed in the Deutsches Museum in Munich, alongside a plaque that reads, "Hauptmann Klaus Weber, Jagdgeschwader, 26, 1943 to 1944, 42 confirmed victories, killed 0 people he knew by name." The B-17 Flying Fortress remained in service until 1968. Total production: 12,731 aircraft. Combat losses: 4,735 aircraft in European theater, additional losses in Pacific. Approximately 47,000 American aircrew killed in B-17s during World War II. The aircraft Weber claimed shouldn't be legally allowed to exist became the symbol of American industrial might and strategic bombing doctrine. It proved that defensive armament, armor protection, bomb load, and operational range could coexist if you spent enough resources solving the engineering problems. Modern military historians debate whether the B-17 was worth its cost. 47,000 dead aircrew for strategic bombing that shortened the war by an estimated 6 months. The mathematics are brutal and necessary. 10,000 fewer American deaths per month of avoided ground combat in 1945, balanced against 47,000 aircrew killed from 1942 to 1945. The men who flew B-17s didn't calculate those ratios. They flew because their country asked them to fly. The men who tried to shoot them down didn't calculate whether defending German factories was worth dying for. They flew because their country ordered them to fly. Klaus Weber understood that in 1945 when Captain Mitchell debriefed him. We were both doing what our nations demanded. The only difference was my nation could replace losses, and yours couldn't. The B-17 was the manifestation of that asymmetry, an aircraft built by a country that treated warfare as an industrial problem and solved it by outproducing the opponent. That's what Weber thought when he first engaged B-17 formations on August 17, 1943. It should be illegal to build this, but legality doesn't determine warfare outcomes. Industrial capacity does. America built 12,000 B-17s. Germany couldn't shoot them down fast enough. That's the entire story of why Weber spent the rest of his life rebuilding buildings instead of flying fighters. The B-17 won by existing in numbers that made tactical excellence irrelevant. If this story gave you a new perspective on engineering, industrial warfare, or the men who fought an aircraft they knew might kill them, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share with anyone interested in World War II history that goes beyond simple heroes and villains narratives. Comment below. What other German perspectives on Allied technology should we explore? What did panzer crews really think about the Sherman tank? What did U-boat captains think about Allied radar? Thank you for watching. Remember the men who flew, the men who fought, and the reality that warfare is decided by industrial capacity as much as courage.